Europe has blessed us with many legendary sports cars, like the Lamborghini Aventador, Audi R8, and the Ferrari 458 Italia. But while these cars have legendary status, some European sports cars are really underrated, and we have no idea why people don't rate those cars because they're so good to drive. In this video, we'll talk about the most underrated European sports cars. Let's starting with Alfa Romeo 4C. We know that Alfa Romeo hasn't been making good cars for a while now, but the Alfa Romeo 4C is probably the best car they ever made, and the most underrated one too. This is something we'd surely love to drive, and you should try too if you get your hands on one. The 4C is just a beautiful piece of machinery. Kudos to Alfa Romeo for this though. They make some of the most beautiful Italian cars of all time. Tipo 33 Stradale, Giulia Quadrifoglio, and the 8C are some of the other beautiful Alfa Romeo cars. It's a small sports car in size, just like the Mazda Miata and the Honda S2000, but apart from the size, there's nothing similar about these cars. 4C is much faster and more beautiful than the two. The first 4C was launched in 2013 as a mid-engine sports car, and it still is one. It came with a 240 horsepower 4-cylinder turbo engine and a really beautiful interior. You must be thinking that it only produces only 240 horsepower and is very small. It mustn't be fast. Next is Porsche 944 Turbo. People have been so crazy about the Porsche 911 and the Boxster that they've forgotten how good the 944 Turbo actually is. Yes, it's quite old now and isn't as pretty as the newer Porsches, but you can still have a lot of fun while driving it. We can easily say that it's the most unique and unusual Porsche to leave the Stuttgart factory. Why is that? Because unlike the other famous Porsches that have a rear-mounted engine, this one comes with a front-mounted engine, which is a very rare sight when we're talking about Porsches. As you must have figured out from the name, this car comes with a turbocharged engine, which makes it even more exciting to drive. Under the hood of this car lies a fast 2.5-liter 4-cylinder engine that's capable of producing around 220 horsepower, which isn't bad. Also, the Turbo S version of this car produced 250 horsepower. Another great thing about this car is that it's paired with the manual gearbox. You must be tempted to drive this car even more now, right? Because we are. Manual sports cars are crazy good. Coming up, Lotus Elise. Another great entrant into the world of small and compact sports cars. Lotus was actually a quite famous British car manufacturer in the 20th century, but towards the end of the 20th century, people started losing interest in their cars, and it became harder for them to sell them. They then decided to launch the Elise, which was the best decision they had made in quite some time. Suddenly, people started to get excited about Lotus again, and for all the right reasons. Because of Elise, Lotus was becoming relevant once again, and why not? It's just too good of a sports car. The Alfa Romeo 4C and this one are in close competition, but we'll go with the Elise because it's clearly better. Lotus only had two things in mind while developing the Elise, and that was to make it as beautiful as it can and as lightweight as it can, and their plan worked perfectly well. Even though this car is powered by a small engine that only produces 118 horsepower because it weighs less than 2,000 pounds, it's mighty quick in a straight line and around the corners. To get behind the wheels of this car would be so good. Next up, BMW 635 CSI. BMW has come a long way now because of the M3 and M5, but we had no choice but to talk about the 635 CSI because it's worth talking about. It's a proper old-school BMW that one can ever drive. It's a classic, just like the Mercedes W140. Both of these cars are legendary, but people don't rate the 635 CSI that much, and we can't figure out why. This is one of those cars that you'd love to drive on your favorite highway, and when there's not much traffic, you can push the pedal deep down and get the maximum performance out of this car. It was originally powered by a big 3.4-liter straight-six engine that could produce 215 horsepower, which isn't bad at all. It's just a sensational machine. Now for Audi TT. This was Europe's answer to the Japanese manufacturers, who were making one cheap sports car after another. They made people realize that sports cars can be affordable too, and Audi listened to them and launched the TT. It was a great blend of affordability, power, and great design. The car was first unveiled in 1995 at the Frankfurt Motor Show, and it amazed quite a lot of people. The car was first launched with a 1.8-liter turbocharged engine that produced 148 horsepower. Over the years, we've seen many engine combinations in the TT, including a 3.2-liter VR6 engine that produces 247 horsepower. This one's a classic and has been featured in many famous video games as well. Following up, the Mercedes-McLaren SLR. The Mercedes-McLaren SLR was a collaboration we never thought was possible and is something we never imagined seeing. Two of the greats, Mercedes and McLaren, collaborated to create something that was the SLR. Why this collaboration was so strange is because these two manufacturers have nothing in common. One only makes hardcore supercars, and one's known for making comfortable and luxurious sedans. But there was nothing strange about the end product though. People don't put enough respect for its name. It really was an absolute beast. When you're behind the wheels of this car, the only thing you can wish for is a straight and empty road, so you can feel all the power it has to offer. The SLR McLaren was powered by a huge 5.4-liter V8 engine that produced a massive 617 horsepower. It was so fast that it only took 3.8 seconds to go from 0 to 60 miles per hour. That's quick. What's more, Lotus Europa. The only thing that was unusual about this car was its design. Like, it's something you'll never probably see again, and perhaps that's good, because this car isn't good looking at all. And this is the only reason why people don't appreciate it that much. But we do, and we are here to tell you guys that you should too, because of what's under the hood. It was powered by a small Renault engine that produced a tiny amount of horsepower, which is 78. Yes, not 178, but only 78. Despite that, it's fairly quick and so much fun to drive because it's so lightweight. It only weighs 1,350 pounds, which isn't that much. Just imagine yourself behind the wheel of this car. Is it fun? We think it is. Let's look at Volvo P1800. The classy, elegant Volvo P1800 is one of the best and one of the most underrated cars Volvo ever made. Volvo's generally famous for making safe, reliable, and luxury sports cars, but they just want to offer something different to the world in the 60s, and that's exactly what they did. There's just so much to love about this car. First of all, the design of this car. Just look at how beautiful it is. Isn't it a masterpiece? Plus, it's one of the most reliable sports cars ever made. How can you not love this one, people? Not to mention BMW Z8. The BMW Z8 was nothing like a conventional BMW. If you remove all the BMW badging from this car, no one could tell that it's a BMW because of its unusual design. Now, don't get us wrong, it's not an ugly car, but something that BMW isn't known for making. Maybe that's why many people don't appreciate it as much as we do. Only 5,703 units of the Z8 were ever made. It was powered by a massive 4.9-liter V8 engine, which is too big for such a small car. The engine produces 395 horsepower, which is insane. We advise you to be a bit careful when driving this because it can surprise you. Finally, Porsche 914. This car was an unusual product of an unusual collaboration. Porsche and Volkswagen collaborated to make this strange but great car. Porsche fans weren't so impressed by this car because it doesn't look at all like a Porsche. They said that it was straight up ugly, but we won't be that harsh because it isn't actually ugly, but not the prettiest as well. It also wasn't the most powerful Porsche ever made, but it sure is a joy to drive nevertheless. We think maneuvering around the corners in this machine would be so much fun. That's a wrap for this video. Could we have added another car to this list? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one.